Good afternoon and welcome to the January 27th Audit Committee meeting. To help slow the transmission of COVID-19 and protect the health and safety of the community, City Council, as well as board and commission meetings, will continue to be closed to the public for in-person attendance. The public is encouraged to watch and participate from the safety of their homes to practice social distancing. Meetings are broadcast live on Glendale TV, viewable on Spectrum Cable, Channel 6, and AT&T UVerse Channel 99. Meetings are also streamed live in high definition on the city's webpage, glendaleca.gov/live, on youtube.com/myglendale, and on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire devices using a free app called ScreenWeave and choosing, quote, Glendale TV, unquote, from the menu. For public comments and questions during the meeting, please call 818-937-8100. Public comments on a specific agenda item will be taken when that agenda item is discussed. Roll call, please.
Committee Member Ed Kashadorian.
Here.
Roosevelt Nazarian.
Present.
Alex Parajon.
Present.
And Chair Zara Amirian.
Present. Next item, please.
Item number 2, business agenda. Number A, report of recording secretary regarding posting of agenda. The agenda for the January 27th, 2022 Audit Committee meeting was posted on January 24th, 2022 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Item number 3, oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 3 minutes. The committee may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The Audit Committee Chair may refer the matter to staff for investigation and report.
Do we have any callers?
Ms. Chair, we don't have any call.
Okay, let's move on to the next item, please.
Item number 4, approval of minutes. A, minutes of the Audit Committee meeting held on July 29th, 2021.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I would like to make a small correction
Yes,
for this one. So after posting the agenda, we noted a typo in this first minute. Normally we only have one. This time we have two. So which is the minute for the July 29, 2021 meeting. The typo within this minute is under the approval of minutes as well. Where the October 29, 2020 should be April 29, 2021. So.
Excellent. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. I will entertain a motion on these minutes.
I move to approve.
Approve as corrected by Ms. Yang.
Yes.
Do I have a second?
I will second it, but I was not present in April and July of 2021.
Ms. Nazarian, did you have an opportunity to watch the Audit Committee meeting from that day?
Yes, I did.
And did you review the minutes, with that, watching that in mind?
Yes, but only the one from July 29, 2021.
Okay, well then, Ms. Farpetian, if I am correct, is that sufficient for her to participate in this motion?
She can second the motion, the ones that she's viewed. She can vote on those and abstain on the second, so you may want to take them separately.
Excellent. Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the approval of the minutes from the Audit Committee meeting held on July 29th, 2021 with the typo corrections pointed out with Ms. Young. Roll call, please.
Committee Member Ed Kashadorian.
Yes.
Roosevelt Nazarian.
Yes.
Alex Parajon. Alex Parajon.
Yes.
And Chair Zara Amirian.
Yes. Next item.
Approval of minutes, Part B, minutes of the Audit Committee meeting held on October 28th, 2021.
I move to approve.
Do I have a second?
I have a question. I thought the October 28th, 2021 was a typo and it should have been April 29, 2021. Am I understanding that correctly?
So
Ms. Nazarian,
that's the,
I believe that correction had to do with the actual minutes for the July 29th, 2021 meeting.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. In that case, then I should not, I should abstain from to that minute order, which it was April of 29, 2021.
We'll amend the record to reflect that.
Thank you,
Thank-
Ms. Marpetian.
And now we're looking at a motion and we need, I think, a second for the next set of minutes.
Yes.
Which I will second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Committee member Ed Kashadorian,
Yes.
Rosevart Nazarian,
Yes.
Alex Parajon,
Abstain.
and Chair Zaria Miriam.
Yes. Next item, please.
Item number 5, action items.
Okay, we have no action items. Next item.
Item number 6, reports and information. Part
Uh,
A.
On this, if we can actually move 6B, we'll take 6B first. So can you please read that into the record?
Item number 6B, comprehensive annual financial report and report to the Audit Committee from Clifton Larson Allen LLP, Alwin De Leon, Finance Accounting Manager.
Excellent. I believe we have Mr. Or Ms. De Leon here. Let's see here. Mr. De Leon. Oh, there you are.
Yes, I'm here.
And then we also have Ms. Munoz as well, correct?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay.
Okay, good afternoon, Chair and committee members. My name is Alwin De Leon, and I'm one of the accounting manager in Finance Department. Let me just share my screen for now. Does everybody see my screen? I want to make sure.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I will present the information about the city's comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2021. I'll talk about the financial report and the audit results. At the end, I'll introduce the city's external auditor to present their required communication with the Audit Committee. The Finance Department usually takes about 6 to 7 months from June through December to prepare and complete the financial report, work with the city's external auditor to complete the audit, and submit the financial report for City Council adoption. The financial report has 3 sections: introductory, financial, and statistical. The financial section is the main section, and it includes all the fund's financial statements and the required footnote disclosures. Slide 5 shows the city's statement of net position, which is the balance sheet of all city funds. As of June 30, 2021, the city has over $1.6 billion in net position. Slide 6 is the city's statement of activities, which is the income statement of all city funds. In fiscal year ended June 30, 2021, the city has a decrease of about $2 million in net position. Next, I'll talk about the fiscal year-end audit results. The external auditor issues 3 reports. The first report is the opinion letter. The city received an unmodified opinion, which is the best and cleanest opinion we can receive. The second report is the report on internal control over financial reporting. The city's external auditor did not identify any significant deficiency or material weakness. And the last report is the communication with those charged with governance. The external auditor will discuss these three reports in more details during their presentation to the Audit Committee. This concludes my presentation, and I'll accept any questions you may have. If no questions, then I will introduce the city's external auditor.
You know what? Let's go ahead and introduce the external auditor, and then if there are any questions, we'll kind of ask them at the end.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Gilliam.
Okay, thank you. I would like to introduce the city's external auditor, Ms. Daphne Munoz, engagement partner at Clifton Larson Allen LLP, to present the auditor's required communication to the committee. Thank you, Chair and committee members.
All right.
Ms.
Good
Munoz,
afternoon.
welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Let me just go share my screen. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. And I'm Daphne Munoz, a principal at Clifton Larson Allen, and I'm here today to present the results of our audit for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2020. My presentation will cover the following. I'll go over the scope of our services, and I'll go over a little more detail of our auditor's opinion. Also, I'll go over our report on internal control over financial reporting, and lastly, as Alan mentioned, I'll go over our required communications with those charged with governance. So for this fiscal year, the scope of our services is we perform an audit of the financial statements for the year ended June 30, 2021, in accordance with generally accepted and government auditing standards. We will also be performing an audit of the federal grant expenditures under uniform guidance. It's commonly referred to as a single audit, and this is because the city spent more than $750,000 in federal grant expenditures, and this is we are expected to start this next month. We also perform an agreed upon procedures related to the city's calculation of the appropriations limit. Just want to go over a little bit more in detail auditor's opinion. This is on page 1 of the annual comprehensive financial report. The first paragraph talks about the period that is covered by our audit. So we've performed an audit for the year ended June 30, 2021, which covers the period July 1st, 2020 through June 30, 2021. The financial statements are the responsibility of the city. They are responsible for the presentation and fair preparation of the financial statements, as well as adopting internal controls over those financial statements. Our responsibility as auditors is to provide opinions on whether the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respect. We conducted our audit in accordance with auditing standards generally accepted in the U.S., as well as standards applicable to financial audits contained in the government auditing standards issued by the Comptroller General of the United States. Those standards require us that we plan and perform the audit to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the financial statements are free from material misstatements. Based on our audit evidence, we've gathered enough adequate audit evidence that is sufficient and appropriate to provide a basis for our opinions. As Alwyn mentioned, we have provided the city our opinion for the year ended June 30, 2025 is the highest opinion that any auditee can get, which is an unmodified opinion. That means that in our opinion, the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects in accordance with GAAP. We have also issued a report on internal control over financial reporting. So as part of our audit, we considered the city's internal control over financial reporting to determine whether the audit procedures as a basis for our audit procedures for purposes of expressing our opinion on the financial statements. However, we do not issue an opinion on the internal controls. Based on our review of the internal controls, we did not identify any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. Just a context, in last year's report, there were 3 significant deficiencies included in our report on internal control over financial reporting, and those all have been corrected and therefore were gone from this year's audit. They're not in the current year report. Lastly, there's our professional standards require us to communicate certain information to those charged with governance. First is the planned scope and timing of our audit. It was communicated during our planning meeting as well as our presentation to the Audit Committee in July of 2021. Management is responsible for the selection and use of accounting policies, and these policies are described in the Note 1 to the financial statements. The financial statements include significant estimates for which actual results could vary with those estimates included in the financial statements. And some of the sensitive and significant statements for June 30, 2021 are the annual required contributions, pension expense, the net pension liability, and the corresponding deferred outflows of resources and inflows of resources for the city's defined benefit pension plans are based on actuarial valuations provided by CalPERS for the CalPERS plan and by an outside actuary for the PARS supplementary retirement plan. The other post-employment benefit expense, total OPEB liability, and any corresponding deferred inflows and outflows for the city's other post-employment benefit plan is based on an actuarial valuation provided by a third-party actuary. The sick leave conversion related expense and the liability related to the city's retiree health savings plan is based on an actuarial valuation provided by a third-party actuary as well. The claims liability for workers' compensation and general liabilities are based on certain actuarial assumptions and methods prepared by an outside consultant. And lastly, the liability related to the landfill post-closure care costs is based on estimates provided by the LA County Sanitation District. We did not have any difficulties during our audit. We did not have any disagreements with management during the course of our audit. Management has provided us certain representations in a letter dated November 16, I believe that's actually November 2nd, not 16. Oh yeah, November 16, 2021. In that letter, the management has represented to us that they have provided us all pertinent information related to our audit. Lastly, to our knowledge, the city management did not consult with other accountants regarding auditing or accounting matters. We did not have any disagreement as far as accounting treatment, so I don't believe the city. This is what it's commonly referred to as opinion shopping. That concludes my presentation. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Munoz. I'll open it up to questions from the committee.
I have a few questions.
Ms. Nazarian.
Yes, thank you. I believe that the statement was that income statement increased $2 million this year. Did I understand that correctly?
Mr. De Leon, you are on mute.
Yeah, the question is addressed to Mr. De Leon.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
I apologize if what I said is an increase, but actually it's actually a decrease of $2 million in that position.
Oh, it is a decrease, not increase.
No.
And then do we know what is the, what does that signify? Why is it decreased?
This last fiscal year, we actually have more, I guess, more expenses in the business activities of the cities compared to what was anticipated revenue collected.
Okay, so it's the expenses were increased, and that's why the decrease. Okay.
Yes, correct.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nazarian. Any other of the committee members?
Chair Miriam, I have a quick question.
Mr.
Thank you for Mr. De Leon. If you could just help us understand a couple of things. First, I would like to know what is our level of dependence to government grants, be that from state or the federal government. And then if you can help us understand whether or not that dependence has, as far as the operational, I think, probably operationally, as far as that, has that level of dependence increased over time or not? Thank you.
We have actually received federal grants every year, and I believe definitely most of our programs, especially Section 8 and housing programs are dependent on those grants, and other departments like Public Works and safety, like fire, also are receiving grants for some of their operations, and also community services and parks are also receiving grants to provide employment and housing as well. So as Daphne has mentioned, we report single audit. It's because the city is spending more than 750,000 in federal grants. So yes, the city is dependent on these grants in order to provide these services, to the constituents.
So I guess in terms of general administrative portion of the grants, is there a way we can see what that number is? Do you report that separately? I know it's in the tables, but do you report that in a way that we can see maybe like the trend over time?
Yeah, I think maybe we can get back to you and provide that report to show you the trend on grants. I mean, we have the single audit to show how much grants we spend each year, but on our comprehensive annual financial report, most of our grants are actually reported under the special revenue funds. So we can show that as well in there. But if you need a report that shows a trend of our grant receipt and expenses, maybe we can get back and provide that report.
Mr. De Leon, before we ask for a report, Mr. Tatalian, I saw you wanted to chime in, please.
I appreciate that, Chair Miriam. I think I'm trying to address the original question, which was with respect to the city's dependence on grants. I'm not sure that that's a way that I would necessarily phrase the city's use of grant funding. Grant funding, in terms of analyzing a trend, is really going to depend on the availability of grants. And grants are out there to provide an actual service for an area of either need or a special area of interest from the granting agency. As a full service city that provides so many different services to the community, we're always looking for grants. In fact, we recently hired a grant writer to specifically go out there and look for grants to augment our existing services or our existing resources. So in terms of how much we're dependent on it, I would say that we're only as dependent as we're able to obtain them or secure them. And frankly, if it ever comes down to a situation where we're going to require additional staff resources to implement a grant-funded program, those positions would be hired on an unclassified basis, because once the grant is gone, those positions would have to be gone as well. We have to be very cognizant of making sure that we're not building structures that we can't sustain long-term. So I think that was maybe where your question was really headed. I wanted to make that portion very clear.
Okay, thank you. That actually helps. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Taladian. Mr. Bradford.
And thank you, Chair Miriam and members of the committee. If I just may add on to what Mr. Taladian said, he's absolutely correct as far as our dependence on grants. To the extent we can pay for them and get those dollars, and we do compete for them with all the other agencies up and down the state and federal grants, but as administrative allowances increase and decrease, we adjust accordingly. We do not put any ongoing operations in the general fund heavily dependent on grants for that very reason.
If I may. Oh, I'm muted.
No,
Thank
go
you,
ahead.
Mr. Bradford. Ms. Munoz.
There's actually a trend analysis in the back of the annual financial report, and in this year's it's page 198. It talks about all the revenues and most of the grants that is received from other agencies, whether it's federal or state. There's a line item there for revenue from other agency. This will just to address the other question without it may address the question that for the trend analysis of how much revenue from other agencies the city has received. It shows the 10-year trend from this year to 10-year. So,
And it's on the comprehensive report, right?
correct. It's on in the statistical section in the back.
Hey, could you just give me the page number again?
Page 198.
98. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Munoz. Mr. Khachaturian, did you have any further questions?
No questions. No, thank you.
Mr. Parham?
No questions.
I do have a couple of questions. Ms. Munoz, would you put up slide 4 from your presentation,
Oh,
please?
yes. Thank you. Okay, let me share my screen again.
So, and this is your opinion, kind of, this is what you do as the external auditor. Approximately how many hours of work does this entail?
For the city of Glendale, it's actually between 500 to 600 hours.
And in that 500 to 600 hours of work, how many hours of that is in directly interacting with the personnel, city staff, of the city of Glendale?
I would say really because, I would say 50-50 because a lot of those, while they provide us all the information up front when we give them the request, there's a lot of back and forth as far as follow up on the schedules that are provided to us.
In those hundreds of hours of interaction with city staff, how would you characterize the professional, how would you characterize the city staff?
Okay. Actually, I would, and this is not because the staff are present in this, but I would say the city of Glendale's finance department is actually one of the most conscientious and very prompt staff that I work with. We have a pretty tight deadline this year with the former finance director's retirement. We were up against the time of trying to make the presentation in time for the first meeting in December, but they're very prompt with and they're not the type of finance staff that will just accept and say, once we tell them something, they actually do ask and try to understand. What very professional and very helpful and very competent.
Thank you. If one were to, without any evidence, suggest that the staff of the city is somehow presenting inaccurate information to council or to the public, would you agree with that statement based upon your hundreds of hours of your firm's hundreds of hours of auditing the city's financial and working with staff?
Let me just see if I understand that. Do I think that the finance staff presents accurate information to the public? I believe to the best of their ability, what they provide to the public are supported with information that they have in the finance department.
Have you seen any evidence at all during the time that Clifton Larson has been the external auditor of any of that type of behavior?
Of trying to provide inaccurate information.
Or misrepresent.
No,
Have you seen any evidence of that?
no.
And if you were to see evidence of that, you would be required to report that, correct?
Correct. Any misstatements that we've uncovered as a result of our audit procedures, if they are material, they will be included in our report on internal controls, which I think we did have some of those last year.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you very much. That's and Mr. Bradford.
Thank you, Chair Marion, and I'd be remiss if I didn't, even though I wasn't officially over-financed during the preparation of this particular financial statement, and when I harken back to my previous tenure in the finance department, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the accounting department. Mr. De Leon, Sujan Lee, I believe, is online, and Teresa Clark are here representing the accounting department. But as noted in the report, this is a 6-month process. And the auditor's time is just the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. Staff spend an incredible amount of time to go through these statements with a fine-tooth comb. And as the auditor had indicated, these statements are in accordance with our accounting principles and standards, and they represent in all material facts the financial condition of Glendale as of the reporting date. And I just want to thank the accounting staff for all their hard work and their efforts. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Bradford. And just to contextualize, I do not want to make it seem, because this does seem like it came out of the blue. Just to contextualize, in a different forum, a different committee for the city of Glendale, there was an accusation without evidence, and a pervasive accusation without evidence that city staff is somehow, providing, or misleading, the public or the city council. And I think specifically they even mentioned, internal audit and finance, which I obviously took exception to. So it was very providential that we happened to have a meeting less than a week later where I could ask you your professional, opinion on that. And I appreciate you providing that. Because in my experience, as the chair of the audit committee and a member of the audit committee, I've seen the same thing. So thank you, Mr. Leon. I just wanted to offer some context to that so that everybody here understood, because they may not have heard those statements.
Okay.
If we have no further questions or comments, let's move on.
Chair Miriam, I just wanted to.
Mr. Khachaturian.
Yes, real quickly, I just went and looked at the numbers. So it looks like over the past 5 years or so, well, I don't want to use the word dependence, but like the share of revenue from government sources has increased from 22.7% to 27.7%, which is actually a good thing. I mean, I did not ask the question, in a pejorative sense of the word, but my point was that if we notice that this percentage keeps increasing, well, we had some extraordinary conditions in the past couple of years. I just wanted to make sure that going forward, if these sources of revenue start going down, whether or not it's going to have an effect on the administrative portion, not the programmatic portion of the cost. But so if we can maybe, talk about this for a few minutes, that would be very helpful.
Yes, Mr. Bradford.
Yes, Chair Marion, members of the Audit Committee. So as grant dollars fluctuate, as they go up and down, ultimately the more dollars we can get. These are all program-based to the community. They're very community centric, and Mr. Taktalian touched on it, whether it be community development through their Section 8 program or other low-income housing projects. Regrettably, if there's administrative costs tied to them, we would have to adjust accordingly, as Mr. Taktalian indicated. Those positions that we have to add on that are solely 100% grant funded are unclassified positions. And regrettably, as the grant dollars fluctuate and go up and down, we have to adjust accordingly. But as far as our full-time classified positions, we're very, very leery of tying any type of ongoing support cost in the general fund to any type of grant dollars that may not exist in the future, depending on the particular grant program.
I see. So I think when you mentioned that any hiring will be classified hiring, was going back to the administrative portion as well, right? Oh, okay.
That is correct.
Thank you. Thank you so much. No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Khachdurian. Mr. De Leon, did you have something?
Yes, I was about to, but I think my Director of Finance, Mr. Jason Bradford, already addressed it. Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. Any other comments or questions on this item? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Munoz. And thank you, Mr. De Leon. I appreciate the presentation and your input. Let's move on to item 6A.
Item number 6A, Internal Audit Activity Report as of December 31st, 2021. Jessie Jung, Internal Audit Manager.
Ms. Zhang.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and Audit Committee members. Jessie Zhang, Internal Audit Manager. This afternoon, I would like to provide you a report on the internal audit activities for the quarter ended December 31st, 2021. So as outlined at the beginning of the activity report, there are a total of 7 sections that provides a summary of what internal audit team has completed in the past quarter. So I will go over these sections. Section 1 covers projects that have completed during the past quarter. This afternoon, we have prepared one PowerPoint presentation for you. This is a contract compliance audit that was completed by our senior internal auditor, Samil Salim. So Samil, you may start the presentation when you're ready.
Okay, one second.
Mr. Salim.
All right, thank you. Let me share my screen. Okay, can everybody see and hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. So good afternoon, Chair Marion and fellow Audit Committee members. My name is Samil Salim, and I'm going to be going over the Glendale Parking Facilities Agreement audit today. So the Glendale Parking Facilities Agreement is basically, oh, my slider wasn't working. It's an agreement between the Glendale Community College and the City of Glendale regarding parking revenues related to the parking structures therein. So this is a little map of the Glendale Community College. So the bottom lots are all owned and operated by the City of Glendale. And the main GCC, Glendale Community College lot, is operated by GCC. So these are the parking lots in question, and the GCC parking agreement regulates basically the revenues and expenses for these lots. So some main tidbits from the contract itself. The contract calls out the administration, and basically the administration is made up of 2 people from the City of Glendale and 2 people from GCC, and collectively by majority vote, they're responsible to set parking rates, set hours of operations, policies that govern the parking lots, and approve joint expenses if there are any. Regarding general expenses, each agency is responsible for their own parking lots expenses. Accounting, both sides are required to keep separate records of the parking related revenues. And then both parties are entitled to 50% of the total parking revenues. And the payments are due on a quarterly basis regarding the 50% revenue share. So those are kind of the main highlights of the contract overview. Now I'll kind of talk about the revenue collection process. So these aren't the actual pictures, but it kind of, I just pulled them off the internet just to give you an idea. So these are the two types of meters that are found within the both city-owned parking lots and the GCC-owned parking lots. The city-owned parking lots, at the time of the audit at least, used the older coin-type meters, quote-unquote dummy meters. And then GCC itself had 5 of the newer pay stations, which accept both credit card and coins. And both of these meters are serviced by the meter shop within the city of Glendale, with 100% of the coins being collected by the city of Glendale, and 100% of the credit card and coins from the pay stations located on the GCC main campus are also collected by the city of Glendale. Just a side note, they were installed at the time of audit, but these weren't switched on. But now our lots also have these pay stations operational on our lots as well. They just weren't there at the time of the audit. So just a little side note. The third type of revenue is student parking permits. And those are administered by GCC. They collect 100% of the revenue for student parking permits. And then what is supposed to be on a quarterly basis, at least per the agreement, City of Glendale cuts a check for 50% to GCC, and GCC in turn cuts City of Glendale a check for 50% of the revenue that they collect. So that's kind of a high-level overview of revenue sources and who collects them and how they're distributed. Regarding actual revenues collected for the audit period and reimbursable expenses, for the parking meters, there were $16,287 collected by the City of Glendale. And GCC actually had a net cost of $22,000 that they stated. This is an unaudited number on our part, but they stated that that's what it was. And these numbers are greatly lower than what they normally are because of COVID-19. The GCC campus was closed. So this parking permits, there was a lot of refunds that they had to issue. And obviously, if they're closed, the students aren't going to be using the meters as well. So meters usually are over $300,000 and $300, $400, $500, depending on the year of revenue on an annual basis. And the parking permits are stated to have annual revenue of close to $1 million normally. So the revenues are less, but it does give us an opportunity to look at the process now, which is a good thing. And as I mentioned, the 5 pay stations, those meters on the right there on the top, located on the GCC campus, those are actually owned by GCC. But because we have the in-house expertise to service and operate meters, they thought it was mutually beneficial to let the City of Glendale service and collect those meters. But in exchange for that, we are entitled for reimbursement for our share, for the cost to provide that service. And so GCC paid us an annual amount of $24,000, which represent the bill that we sent them for the fiscal year to service those 5 pay stations all year long. Objectives and scope. The objective was to ensure parking revenues and expenses were complete, supported, and properly allocated in accordance with the agreement. Scope covered fiscal year 2021, July 1, 2020 to June 30, 2021. And as mentioned earlier, this only covers city side of operations. We're currently still looking at the GCC side of operations, and we hope to issue a separate audit report, which will talk about the findings from that side of the audit. The audit process, we interviewed city and GCC personnel. We reviewed revenue transactions, sampled transactions to ensure the 50-50 revenue split between both sides was accurate and complete. And then we reviewed that year-end annual reimbursement billing that we send to GCC to maintain those 5 pay stations that they have on their lot. So a summary of our findings, we found this revenues and expenses were generally complete, adequately supported, and appropriately allocated, which is a good thing. However, we did note 6 improvement opportunities related to the following 4 areas. First one having to do with documentation. The second one is adhering to the terms of the GCC agreement. And then the third one was enhancing count room security. And lastly, restricting parking software user access. And I'll now get into each of those 6 opportunities in further detail. So the first one is regarding revenue recording procedures. So when I was testing the revenues, I noted there were a few months of revenue that were slightly understated by like $500 only. And that was due to staff incorrectly netting revenues and credit card fee expenses together. However, the department itself identified that error and corrected it. But that, in conjunction with the amount of massaging that it takes to get to these final numbers, kind of illustrates the need of a policy and procedure that talks about that documents how revenues should be identified and recorded. And so the management action plan was to develop procedures to document how revenues should be identified and recorded. The second one had to do with the parking facilities agreement itself. We found a few discrepancies within the agreement. The first one was that the agreement says that payments are due on a quarterly basis. However, both the City of Glendale and GCC have mutually agreed, verbally at least, agreed to amend that to maybe twice a year and not quarterly, because the quarterly frequency may be a little bit too taxing. So that's one discrepancy between the agreement and actual practice. The second one had to do with a small typo regarding the late payment interest rate that's applicable on late payments. And then the third one is that the agreement states the administration, which again is comprised of 2 people from the city and 2 people from GCC, are collectively responsible to set parking rates. However, parking rates have been established prior to the agreement by each respective party, and they kind of just kept it going as is. There's no real annual meeting between both parties to review rates and approve rates. So the action plan is to review these discrepancies with the GCC representatives, document discussions within meeting minutes, and make amendments to the agreement as they find fit. Third one had to do with video surveillance. So there's a number of video cameras surrounding the count room, both inside and outside of the count room. However, the DVR where the video storage is recorded is also stored locally. And so our recommendation was to look into a cloud-based solution or something remote where the video storage is independent of the space it's actually securing. And the management plan reflects the same: utilize a remote backup solution so that video footage is secure and independent of the space being monitored. Fourth one has to do with user access. This is honestly, this is a value-added thing that we frequently find when we audit various departments. There were 2 users who were no longer active who still had access to the system. And then secondly, there were a number of people with administrative access, but not all of those users actually required that access. So our action plan was to obtain an understanding of the roles and assign users accordingly, deactivate the two separated users, which they did do right away upon notification, and lastly, regularly review the user listing for inactive users. Fifth one had to do with the documentation, the coin counting machine printout. So this is not the actual coin counting machine, but it just gives you an idea of like, so when our meter shop goes out and collects the meters from the various coin meters, they come back to the meter shop and they plug all the coins into a big coin counter. At the end of the day, the coin counter gives a printout of the day's total. That total is generated and it is kept by the meter shop. However, the official city record is the supporting documentation that's uploaded to Munis, and that Munis documentation does not contain the daily total. And so it's a very good piece of evidence that we do generate, we do collect, and we do keep. But the recommendation was just to also include that into the Munis supporting documentation so that Munis is complete and stands on its own. We don't have to go and request any additional information. If anyone wants to see it, they could just go there and grab everything they need. Lastly, it has to do with the annual maintenance bill. And again, this is for that annual bill that we send to GCC to operate and maintain and collect the 5 pay stations they have on the GCC campus lot. And so there was some small discrepancies that we noted. Basically, there was a small overbilling that we calculated of about $779 to GCC, and that was a result of using older rates and using older estimates, and the documentation and support for those rates and estimates were no longer kept on hand. So our recommendation was to use actuals versus estimates when available, retain the supporting documentation that talks about the numbers you came up with and how you came up with them. And then lastly, resolve this small overbilling with GCC and document the agreed upon acknowledgement going forward. Like, are they okay with it? Or is there a refund we owe? That sort of thing. Yeah, with that concludes my presentation. I'll be glad to take any questions that you may have. We also have the city's parking manager, Tad Dombrowski, available. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Salim. I'm going to open it up to questions from the committee. Okay. Seeing no questions.
I have a question here. Alex Barham.
Mr. Parhon, please.
Yeah. So my question is, do you handle the same process for city-related parking meters as well? Meaning it's pretty much the same overall what you guys do at Glendale College compared to the city parking lots?
You mean for the other meters?
Yeah.
The non-GCC meters?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that wasn't in the scope of this audit. However, the process as far as collecting coins is essentially the same. Tad, if you're online, if I misspoke, feel free to correct me or chime in.
Oh, okay, I know it's on the scope. I was just trying to get more understanding, because if you're concentrating on GCC only, I'm thinking the same process goes with the regular meters out here in the regular city streets. Because, for example, user access, right? You have an issue where there's 2 employees that had access that shouldn't have had. This is the same system, concurrently from that same scope, where you just eliminated it and you killed 2 birds with 1 stone, And the other thing I just wanted to understand is, so the revenue that you guys do, the 50% split of the revenue, how is that determined in regards to the payout? Meaning, is there a time frame when you guys actually pay it out, where it's been all fully signed off, that someone from the accounting department has approved the numbers and okay, we're ready to pay out our 50%. Is there a timing process on that?
Yeah, so that the revenue is the revenue, the 50% revenue payout is due on a quarterly basis, at least per the agreement. But again, like I mentioned, there's a disconnect between that and actual practice in that we're paying out less frequently, but that's not a result of any wrongdoing or being late or anything. It's just that I think GCC actually prefers to do it on a less frequent basis because it requires less work because it takes a good amount of time to massage the data to come up with these numbers, and so they rather do it twice a year, say, versus 4 times a year. But the agreement does say it's due 4 times a year, and it's due for the preceding 3 months of that quarter that the payment is due.
I see. And does the system itself at the college, the automated system where you put credit card, does that keep a tally or accounting records that says, okay, today we collected X dollar amount, and we should be able to see that, right?
Yes. Right. Yeah, that's a good question. So that's one of the benefits of these newer pay stations is that it keeps an independent tally of what the totals the machine should show. So when let's say a meter tech, this is not happening, but let's say someone were to undercount or overcount, right? You do have that independent number from the machine that says this is what the total should be as of the day you collected for it. So you have to answer for any discrepancies between the machine and actual. So that's actually one of the main benefits of these pay stations is that it provides that independent total.
Okay, cool. And then with the revenue recording procedure, I saw that you guys discovered that within revenue you also saw credit card fees in there. Did you guys go retro and say, hey, we actually found more from prior years on that, and then you make an adjustment to pay Glendale College because now you're pretty much shorting them on payments, or did you just say, you know what, it's just for this year going forward because the prior year was closed? Is there anything like that?
Yeah. So I looked at when I find so this was related to 3 months only. And so when I saw that 3 months, I looked at the whole year for this particular issue, and this issue wasn't found. But like I said, I wasn't the one. I did notice it, obviously, and that's why I asked the question. But in asking the question, it became clear to me that they themselves are the ones that they actually discovered it themselves, and so the revenue was not under collected, over collected. We paid the right amount because we self discovered and corrected it on our own.
Okay, and the fees to have a camera out there, I'm assuming that's the camera is primarily for safety reasons, right? That the college probably requires for their students. That's the reason why we have that expense, you could say.
The cameras?
Yeah.
I mean, as far as my recommendation for the cloud-based storage.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's that has to do with the meter shops. Our City of Glendale meter, where we bring in the coins to count the coins. It's not on the GCC campus. It's
okay. So to count the coins. Okay.
Yeah, that's on our facility. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's just so that you guys make for safety reasons, obviously for fraud activity. Okay, makes sense. All right, great. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Mr. Parhon. Just to follow up on one of the questions that Mr. Parhon asked, so the finding of the users, anything that related to the counting, whether it's the cameras or the system, the users, that's the City of Glendale's kind of shop that also handles all of the other meters in the City of Glendale. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, there's one main count area where all the city's meters are counted. And
do you know what the approximate percentage is of the Glendale College meters versus the whole?
Oh, I'll need a Tad. Tad, are you online?
Good afternoon, Chairperson Marion. Yes, it's I can give you approximates right now because the revenue is down so significantly at GCC. It's much less.
I can imagine.
But typically, I would say with our digital meter system, it was hovering somewhere around 30%. Was coming in back in pre-COVID numbers. It was about 30% of the revenue through that system that was being generated at GCC.
Got it. Got it. I appreciate that information. Just to put things in perspective. Thank you, Mr. Dombrowski.
No problem.
Any further questions from the rest of the committee?
No questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Salim, and thank you, Mr. Dombrowski.
Thank you.
Ms. Young.
All right. So let me actually share my screen for the remaining part of the. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So we can all on the same page. So the next section is project in progress. So the section 2 provides a brief summary of the projects that the team is currently working on. There are 3 in progress projects currently. The first one is the Emergency Medical Services Revenue Recovery Audit. That one Natalie is currently working on. This project will be completed soon, so you will receive a report hopefully in February, and then you will hear our presentation in our April meeting. And the second one is the another contract compliance audit that Ani is working on. It's the tennis concessionaire agreement. And then the last one on the list is actually related to our ongoing risk assessment, where we periodically survey departments on hot topics. In the past, if you recall, we have done safety related to COVID survey, fraud risk checkup. And this one, this time is related to third-party vendor risk. So yeah, we look forward to presenting these projects to you at our next meeting. The next one is the section 3, continuous auditing. During this past quarter, we've completed 1 continuous auditing test. This is actually a new test. The script was developed as part of our training. We had a field workshop provided by our Abuta software consultant, and we asked the consultant to tailor the training for us by basically including real projects that we planned. So this is actually one of the case studies, and they turn into actual projects. And Ani, you know, it's really, I mean, everybody learned a lot, and they improved our script writing skills. So then she developed this script, and this is a new test we're going to do going forward. So basically, this is to test, there's a limit on P card. So each department, each year has a limit of $15,000 to any given vendor. Our test is to make sure that the 15,000 limit is not exceeded by the vendors, to the vendors that with the existing PO with the city. So of the over 3,000 P-card transactions we reviewed, we found 35, I think 35 is about 1% exceptions or policy violations. So we provided the information, test result to each department that impacted. And then we also provided information to purchasing administrator and to, to just relay back the reasons or stories that we received from each department, why they exceeded the limit. So then maybe the purchasing administrator can evaluate to see if the policy can be more clear on what the requirements are, and also maybe more clear procedures for department to follow when there is a actual reasonable exceptions is needed. One of the ones we noted is, for example, the emergency purchases. So those are, reasonable, and we should have a clear procedure set up for those exceptions situations for department. So that's the continuous auditing test. And then again, the next three sections are related to quarterly follow-up. So section number 4 basically provides very brief summary on the implementation status of the outstanding items that we followed up on with department representatives. So for this past quarter, we have followed up with departments on 21 outstanding items from 7 audits, of which 4 were implemented and 17 outstanding items remain at the end of the quarter. Let's see. The next section, section 5, summarized the outstanding priority 1 items. So there were 2 outstanding priority 1 items left on the list. A lot of progress has been made, but they're not completed yet. I hope the next quarter, I think the second one should be completed. Because significant progress has been made, and executives from different departments are involved. So I have a good feeling about this one will be done, taken off the list. The first one, though, it's a little bit out of our control because, GWP needs to work with the schools, to decide what to do about it. So that's the 5, and section 6 provides a summary of outstanding audit items meeting certain discussion criteria. But for this past quarter, there were no outstanding audit items that enter into any of the 3 events category. So any questions on follow-up?
Any questions from the committee members?
I have just few questions on
Yes, Ms. Nazarian.
number 3. If you can see on the screen, what is this P card? I personally don't know what P card is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
It's a procurement card. It's a card. It's like a credit card issued to employees.
Okay.
Yeah, to make those small purchases. It's actually a very good and effective tools and very efficient, but then it's also higher risk. So that's why the city put in controls in place.
Does it have a limit?
Yes, each card holder has a per transaction limit and also per month limit.
Mm-hmm. So it differs per month, like every employee has a different cap amount to use, or it applies everyone equally?
Yeah, each one, Yeah, each one has may have a different amount. It depends on what the what's the term? Hard approver, the approver or the department head. I think annually, or when the employee apply for the procurement card, that's where the limits are set for the employee.
Okay, so
based on their needs and purchasing needs.
Sorry. Okay, so the department that issues the card has the discretion to determine what is the limit on the card.
It's a in conjunction with recommendation from purchasing.
Oh, I see. Okay, and then when on the item number 4 where it says there were 7 projects, what projects are the 7 projects?
Let me check. I was actually going to mention something about a new tool we developed, but hold on. The 7 projects. So we have risk management function research and staffing analysis. That's one. GPD, property inventory audit. Poor toll and capital recycle water audit. Sewer building audit. So these 2 are the ones that actually have priority 1 listed on the under section 5. And we have Modern Parking Inc. contract audit and the new one, the Glendale Parking Facilities Agreement audit. And we have another one is false alarm audit. So all of these are the audit reports we issued before.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you, Ms.
for the
Nazarian.
questions. All right, so I think the last section is related to the advisory services that internal audit involved. I think this quarter, the one thing I would like to highlight is related to the PCI compliance team. So during November, December, we actually have an annual PCI compliance assessment done. This assessment was done by the external quality security assessor. So, and as a result, the city has basically demonstrated the full compliance with the PCI DSS. And then we are good for another year. So the next one will be December 2022. So internal audit is a part of the city's PCI compliance team. So I think you've heard probably last meeting, Samuel had a PCI compliance audit. So we performed 3 quarterly PCI compliance audit. And one of the goals is to help the city department get ready for this annual external assessment. So I guess Samuel's hard work got paid off as part of the team. It's a good team effort, and we received a good result this year. So that basically concludes this quarter's activity report.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Any further questions or comments from the committee?
No questions.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on, please. Next item.
Item number 7, Audit Committee staff comments.
I'm going to open it up to staff first. Any staff comments? Any committee member comments?
No comments.
I do have a couple comments. Number one, and I think everybody's probably heard by now, but it is appropriate because Mr. Satrian is technically was still a member of our committee. And it's with great sadness that, if you haven't heard, Mr. Satrian passed on January 6th. And, it's his history with this committee notwithstanding, I've known Mr. Saturian. I'd known him, I don't know, since 2007 or 2008. He was a giant in terms of the diasporic community. He was the founder and president of the Davitian and Mariamian Educational Foundation, which continues to serve, hundreds and has served thousands of children, providing them with after-school activities and cultural enrichment here in the city of Glendale. Yeah, I mean, just there isn't much to say, because his history with this committee is well known in the fact that, in the sense that he kind of came in twice and then he didn't show up, and there were some questions about replacing him, and I remember I ran into him because his office was here in my office building here in Glendale, and he said, I came in and I saw how good of a job all of you were doing, and I called up the council member that appointed me and told him, I'm not needed here. I don't feel like I can add anything. So, that's the type of man he was. I remember the first time I came into contact with him was when I was on the Community Development Block Grant Committee. And I remember he came before the committee, and it was either my first or second year on the committee, and he said, you all know who I am and what we do, and we'd like to get this money. And I remember just thinking to myself, oh my God, that was the presentation, and so I remember that year recommending that Davitian Mariamian Educational Foundation, simply because I had no idea what it was at that time, get $0 from the CDBG. And I remember getting a phone call, and someone said, do you have something personal against Mr. Saturian? I'm like, I don't even know Mr. Saturian. I'd love to get to know him. And so I did get to know him, and I saw firsthand, I visited the program, and after my time on the CDBG, I had the opportunity and the pleasure and privilege to spend 2 years as a board member for Davitian and Mariamian Educational Foundation. And just to show you again the type of person he was, where instead of just being angry and upset, he used it as an opportunity to educate, and invite, someone to learn more and to participate. And so I just wanted to offer my condolences, and the condolences of the committee to Mr. Saturian's family. And, he was a unique guy, and I think none of what happened on the audit committee should in any way tarnish his image, because he did it from a place of hey, you guys are doing great, and you don't need me, so what? I don't need to show up. So I would ask that today's meeting be adjourned in his memory. And I just wanted to say a couple things about my experience with him because I had the pleasure and privilege of knowing him for almost 15 years. I would also like to thank the staff and especially internal audit and finance for the fine work that they continue to do and the professionalism that they display day in and day out. I know that it's not easy, especially when there are, constant voices amongst the public questioning your intentions and basically assuming bad faith. And as the chair of the audit committee, and this is probably my second to last meeting because I'll be termed out, but as the chair of the audit committee for now, I don't know, it's been 7 years now. All I have seen is a continued drive to excellence and a continued striving to meet and exceed the standards of professionalism expected of the types of professionals that we have in audit. And when we have other appointed public officials here in the city of Glendale impugn that without any type of evidence, just casually put out in the public that internal audit is misleading the management of the city or is misleading the city council or is misleading the public without any type of evidence. Look, freedom of speech is great, and I will defend person's right to say it, but there should be consequences nonetheless of people saying things that have no basis, no evidence, no basis in reality, and quite frankly, as I basically served as a public official my entire adult life here in the city of Glendale. I take it very seriously because I've grown throughout my time as well. Because I recall as a younger man, the manner in which I would ask questions would sometimes have, be inferred as I was asking, I was assuming that something nefarious is going on. And I've learned from that. But this isn't that. This isn't just someone learning how to ask the questions in the right way. This is somebody who was appointed by a city council member to serve a position who is then using that position to question the motivations of the fine professionals that work here in the city of Glendale. And in my experience, I think everybody on this committee knows, everybody in staff knows, I call it how I see it. If I saw something that is wrong, I'm the first person to ask hard questions, and I'm the first person to, question why things were done the way they were done. But I would never, ever, ever imagine that there, is a cabal of staff members sitting around and planning and trying to figure out how are they going to mislead the public and how are they going to mislead, the city council. That's just absurd, and I will not stand for it. And, hey, the great thing is I have this forum to make my feelings extremely clear on that and how much I appreciate everything that staff does, how much I appreciate how far internal audit has come in the time that I've been here and the improvements to the processes. And I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you so much. We don't say it enough. Are there opportunities? Are there opportunities to get better? Of course there are. There always are. But you know what? you all are the type of people who are looking for those opportunities, and you're the first ones to say, hey, this is an opportunity for us to get better. How can we do that? So on my behalf, thank you. Thank you. Okay. On that note, let's move on to the next item, please.
Item number 8, new business.
Do we have any new business? No new business. And next item, please.
Item number 9, adjournment.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
And if I may, Mr. Parhon, the motion to adjourn, if it could be in the memory of Mr. Vaik Centurion.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. We are adjourned.
Thank you.